Nasha, Chee Nasha, Chee Nasha, Shike Hujula Eyahi Neya, Ahala Ahala Go Nasha, Ahala Ahala Go Nasha, Chee Nasha. Life has always been here for the past 2,000 years. People have lived and utilized and had their connection to those places in the canyon.
The trees here you see now, the cottonwood, they were only a little ways where we came into the floor. Then around the junction there was only 4 trees. But as I go through life in this time now, from the date I was small to adulthood, like I was mentioning, the Russian olive, the tamarisk, and the peach leaf willow is kind of taking over the floor in some area.
On the Park Service side, the view sheds have been choked close enough that you don't really get to see the wall-to-wall views of the canyon. And we've heard, especially from elders, how that's been an important part of their experience that they've been missing, stuff that they used to remember when they were younger. It's also affected our cultural resources. We've had these Russian olives and tamarisk scrape against rock art, damaging these precious resources. And for visitation, in the past, visitors haven't been able to really see some of the great views of the canyon. So with this watershed project and the removal of the exotic Russian olive and tamarisk, it's really opened up the landscape.
There were many native plants that used to grow in Canyon de Chelly, I understand. When I used to have an office right across over here, the medicine men used to stop by, and I knew these medicine men I got to know. They always said, I'm going into the canyon. I said, okay. And then pretty soon, I don't see them anymore. So I asked one day, when I ran across one of them, he says, I don't see you anymore. He says, I can't find any medicine anymore in there. It's gone, he said, it's been. So I think a lot of these exotics, pushed a lot of these things out of the canyon.
The watershed project was initiated in 2004 to initially remove the exotic Russian olive and tamarisk trees. Well, beginning in the 1930s, they were planted to try to armor the stream banks for farming for canyon residents. But through the years, they've taken over, starting especially in the 1980s. We have a crew of local Navajo guys who've been working for about 6 years now at this project, and they've been systematically removing the exotic trees from the canyon.
I think they had just gotten some funding or something, and I said, put me on top of the list, please, please, please. So I think this was the first area that they started on, and I was just so thankful. I will always be very thankful to the Park Service for that.
I grew up in the time where these Russian olives and tamarisk were really deep, really thick in the canyon floor. But my parents and my grandparents grew up in the time where the canyon floor was empty, where they could see basically from wall to wall. And I wasn't really able to experience some of that.
Spadora I quest on all the 10 so it bell 10 is the eki that you need a cuba conize to other shuma competence as a keta is and the other pagano the pebble ne it dies to it has a traditional only. Då hade det inte så som Sunday. Ja, det hade det inte och hade det bara shit. Hade big kitchen så hade det ne ze penigeni yapichin.
Our people are starting to lose that connection. You know, you go into the canyon, you see a lot of empty homes now. When I used to go up in the canyon, you know, I drive by the family's home, you'll hear children's laughing, running around, chasing each other, playing hide and seek. You hear chickens, you know, rooster howl in the morning, stuff like that. All the sheep bells, you could hear it echoing through the canyon, all these things. You could see fire and you could smell that food, you know, as you're driving by. You know, it's sad to see that, you don't find much of that anymore, you know. I was a child, we sat around and listened to stories, you know. I grew up learning about traditional ways at home, in our own language, you know. I think one of the things that younger generation needs to realize is how our language is so important that we need to maintain it. Once we lose that, you know, our culture is going along with that.
The way to balance traditional ways, the old ways with the new ways, technology and Western influence, is probably through retaining the language and spiritual beliefs. At the same time, education, learning Western ways, technology, modern technology, going to school, because Chief Manuelito is one of the great chiefs of the Navajo people. He's one of the signers of the Treaty of 1868, and he advocates education, learning the ways of the modern ways, the white man's ways.
I'm hoping that in a few years, when my son gets back, that he's going to have to do all this work, you know. But he's been so helpful, you know. He's gotten all the equipment for us, the tractor, you know, the little four-wheeler, so I don't have to be, you know, running from here to there, you know. It's like just jump on there. But the thing was, I didn't know how to operate those things. You know, he was getting all these things, and I'm like, I don't know how to drive that, you know. But I learned, you know. I mean, he just sat me on there and said, do this, you know, and I'm like, oh, my God. He makes it sound so simple, like just do this and just do that. And I'm like, well, you're not the one that's sitting on the tractor with all that dust in your face.
Education, I think, is very important. Keep that balance at the same time, retaining traditional values, spiritual beliefs, and the language itself. There are some things that we do in the Western sense that contradict our thinking in the old traditional ways, but we have songs and we have prayers and we have ceremonies to balance it all out. And so on a daily basis, we strive to live in a balanced universe. That's why the Navajo people say we walk in beauty.
But I would really like to see, you know, more of my generation down there, you know, not going all the way back to the old ways, but you know, just picking up here and there and trying to move on with these older traditions, but bring it up to speed with, you know, today's world. Just to see more people, more residents in the canyon living an active lifestyle is what I really want to see in the next couple of years. And those are my main hopes and dreams that I have of Canyon de Chee.
Ahla ahla gonesha, ahla ahla gonesha, shenesha, shenesha, shiki honjala eya he.